Welcome to Learn English Speaking. Let's talk stories. Here we bring you amazing stories to improve your English fluency. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more exciting lessons. Let's learn together.
Chapter 4 Horton Lodge. I returned to my parents' house, and for a few months I enjoyed a much more relaxing life at home. However, it was not long before I was ready to look for another job. After a few weeks of searching, I was offered a job as a governess for the family of Mr. Murray. The family lived at Horton Lodge, which was a large house about 70 miles away from our village. I had never travelled further than 20 miles from home before, so I was excited by the idea of seeing a little more of the world. The Murray children were a little older than those of the Bloomfield family, and so I hoped that teaching them would be less challenging. In addition, my salary was going to be £50 a year, so I felt sure that I would be able to send a good amount of money back home to help my family. It was decided that I would start my new job at the end of January. When at last the morning came, it was a wild, stormy day, and it was snowing heavily. My journey was long and difficult, and it was dark when I finally arrived at the impressive front door of Horton Lodge. A servant invited me inside and took me straight to the schoolroom, which was at the back of the house. There, two young ladies were sitting by the fire. I supposed that they must be my new pupils. After we had been formally introduced, the older of the two girls spoke.
"Miss Matilda, why don't you show the new governess her room? I'm sure she is cold and tired after her journey,"
she said to the other girl. Miss Matilda was a strong-looking girl of about 14. She stood up and, a little shyly, asked me to follow her. She took me to a room at the very top of the house. Although small, the room was comfortable enough, and I was pleased to be able to take off my wet coat. Matilda left me alone to organise my things and change into dry clothes. A few minutes later, the maid brought me some tea and bread. Feeling a little sad and lonely, I then sat down on the bed and cried. The next morning, I woke up feeling nervous, but also curious to know what my new life would be like in this house. I went down to the schoolroom to begin what would be the first day of 2 years of teaching the girls. I do not want to bore you with all the details of the first year or two with this family. I will simply describe the family and give you a general idea of this time. The head of the family, Mr. Murray, was a tall, well-built man who I did not see very often. Apart from going to church on Sundays, he spent his time horse riding, fox hunting, laughing loudly, and yelling at the servants. Mrs. Murray was not an unattractive lady. She was about 40 years of age, and she certainly enjoyed her food. Her main interests seemed to be either holding or going to parties and wearing the very latest fashions. When I met her for the first time, which was not until halfway through my first day, she told me what my duties were going to be.
"And remember,"
she said, after she had explained the importance of good manners and not working the girls too hard,
"that it is best to be gentle with them."
While Mrs. Murray talked a lot about the comfort and happiness of her children, she never once talked about my comfort and happiness. The eldest daughter, Miss Rosalie Murray, was about 16 years old. She was tall and slim, with pale blue eyes and long fair hair. She really was a very beautiful girl. If only I could say such good things about her character. To begin with, she was cold and unfriendly, and, rather like her mother, she was generally only interested in how she looked, and in the idea that she might in the future marry someone rich. The fourth person in the family, Miss Matilda, was a tomboy and was very different from her sister. She did not care how she looked, and was much more interested in riding her pony or playing with the family's dogs. She was not a good student. She often did her schoolwork too quickly, made little effort, and would run outside as soon as she saw the chance. Once or twice I told her off for not making any effort. However, her mother became so angry with me that I decided that it was best to allow Matilda to do as little as she always had. You may want to know how I spent a typical day at Horton Lodge. This is not easy to describe. I ate all of my meals in the schoolroom with my pupils at whatever times suited them each day. Their hours of study were managed in a similar way. Sometimes the girls decided that they wanted to get all of their studying finished before breakfast, and I would be woken up by the maid at 5:30 in the morning. On one of these occasions, I ran downstairs and waited, only to be told that they had changed their minds and had stayed in bed. On other days, they would simply decide that it was a sunny day, and they did not want to study at all. When they were in the schoolroom, they were lazy and often rude. The servants, who saw how the parents and children of the family showed me so little respect, did not make much more of an effort themselves. I sometimes felt disappointed and upset by the life I led at Horton Lodge. But, with time and patience, things did get a little better. Rosalie became a little more friendly. When she was not being difficult, she could be fun and pleasant to be with, and I grew to like her. Sometimes when she forgot for a moment that I was the daughter of a poor vicar, I think she may even have loved and respected me. What is more, the house was attractive and spacious, and was better in every way than Mr. Bloomfield's house. It had a large garden, and was in beautiful countryside. Every Sunday morning, the whole family and I would leave the house and go out in the carriage. We travelled through this beautiful scenery and along the 2 miles of country roads to the village church. Chapter 5. The Ball. Not long after Rosalie's 18th birthday, the time came for her to be formally introduced to society. She had now finished her education and was old enough to look for a husband. Mrs. Murray was clearly very excited about this fact, and had decided to hold a ball for her daughter at Horton Lodge. It was going to be held on the 3rd of January, and all the rich people, and especially the men, for 20 miles around were invited. Months of preparation began. One evening, about a month before the ball, I was sitting reading a long letter from my sister Mary. Rosalie came into the room and said,
Miss Gray, put that boring letter away, because I want to talk to you about my ball. I don't want you to go home over Christmas. You must stay here and help me plan.
But I'm afraid I can't stay, I replied. I very much miss my family, and this letter that you call boring tells me that my sister is going to get married. I want to be at home with her to help her prepare.
Oh!
cried Rosalie.
Who is she going to marry?
Mr. Richardson, a vicar who lives just a few miles away, I explained.
Is he rich?
She wanted to know. No, not really, I said.
Is he handsome?
She asked. Not really, I told her.
Then, what sort of a house does he own?
A quiet little vicarage, I said, with a small old-fashioned garden and—
Oh, stop! I don't want to hear any more,
she cried.
How on earth can she live there?
I expect that she'll not only manage to live there, but will be very happy, I told her. You did not ask me if he is a good, kind or wise man. I could have answered yes to all those things. From this conversation alone, it was clear to see what Rosalie considered important, and the type of man she wished to marry. When I returned to Horton Lodge after the Christmas holidays, Rosalie and Matilda began to argue about who should tell me their news first. Rosalie, of course, could not wait to tell me about the ball. Matilda was not in the least interested in hearing about her sister's party, but wanted to tell me about her new pony. Matilda had the loudest voice, and so it was she who won the argument. After hearing everything about the pony, including how high it had jumped and how well Matilda rode it, I heard every detail of the ball from Rosalie. Of all the women at the party, she had worn the most beautiful dress, she had danced the most elegantly, and she had attracted the most attention. I could only take her word for how the evening had gone, but one thing seemed clear to me. She had certainly flirted with almost all of the men who had been invited. She told me about 2 lords, who unfortunately were already married, and there was Sir Thomas Ashby, who was very rich but ugly. Then there was Sir Melton, who was good-looking but too old, and the younger of his 2 sons, Harry Melton, who was good-looking but too young. There were a few I had not heard of before, and then finally there was Mr. Hatfield, the local vicar. While he was not impressively rich or from a well-known family, Rosalie seemed to find him acceptable, perhaps because he had been chosen for his job by God himself. "And which of them do you like the best?" I asked her once she had finished naming them all.
"Oh, I hate them all,"
Rosalie replied coldly.
"But old Sir Melton is the most handsome and the funniest. Mr. Hatfield is the most intelligent and interesting, and Sir Thomas the most wicked. If I had to choose one of them, I suppose I would have to choose Sir Thomas Ashby."
"But why would you choose him if you hate him and he is wicked?" I asked her.
"Oh, I don't mind his being wicked. That would make him more fun,"
she explained.
"And as for hating him, that doesn't really matter, because I would be Lady Ashby of Ashby Park in that wonderful house. But the truth is that I would much rather remain single, because I want to really enjoy myself. I would love to spend years and years flirting with anyone I want to. Then, when I've broken 10,000 hearts, I will stop. I will find one man who is rich, generous, and from an excellent family, and I will escape all the black looks that I will be getting from people by marrying him."
Chapter 6. The New Curate. The next Sunday, I accompanied the whole family to church as usual. Rosalie was very keen to go, as she had heard that there was a new curate. As we left the church later that morning, she said,
"Well, Miss Gray, what did you think of the new curate, Mr. Edward Weston?"
"It is hard to say," I replied, "since I have seen him, but I haven't yet spoken to him."
"Well, no, but aren't his clothes old-fashioned? And isn't he ugly?" she asked.
"No, he didn't seem unattractive to me," I replied. I thought for a moment, and then added, "And when he read to us from the Bible, I thought that he read very well. He seemed more interesting and more sincere than Mr. Hatfield."
"Well, anyone can read from the Bible, can't they? But did you see how he walked out of the church?" she said. "He walked along, not looking left or right, as if there was nobody there apart from himself."
"Ah, I see," I said, and smiled. "You mean to say that he made no effort to look at you or come and speak to you?"
"Well,"
she said, and gave me a black look,
"I suppose he's good enough for this place. But have you seen how Mr. Hatfield comes straight to speak to father and me before anyone else? And he always makes sure that he's waiting outside to help me climb into the carriage."
"Yes, I answered. Then I silently thought that it was not good that the vicar had ignored everyone else in the church to go to speak to the Murray family so quickly. I was also offended that he had helped the ladies to get into the carriage, and then had closed the door and walked away. He had left me to open the door again and climb up by myself. The following Sunday we went to church as usual. This time we heard Mr. Weston preach the sermon. I thought that his sermon was well written, and he preached it in a warm and simple way. I was pleased that it was the opposite of Mr. Hatfield's sermons, which were usually boring and full of self-importance. When we left the church this time, it was young Harry Melton who quickly came to talk to the girls, and to help them get into the carriage. He did not help me, but at least he looked at me, and smiled as I climbed in. I then spent the whole of the return journey listening to Rosalie and Matilda argue over which of the two of them Mr. Melton preferred. My life was easier now that I now only had one pupil, and that I therefore did not have to suffer the girls' arguments so frequently. It also meant that I had a little more free time to look around the family's estate. On several occasions I had gone with my pupils to visit the poor workers who lived in the estate cottages. We had taken them food, medicines, and a little money. I had become friendly with one or two of the cottagers, and now I started to visit them on my own. On one bright day, near the end of February, I went to one of the cottages to see Nancy Brown, a widow, a woman whose husband had died, who had been ill and could not see very well. She loved books, and so I went to read to her. The cottage was small and dark, but Nancy had a small fire burning, and she kept the place as clean and as tidy as she could. When I had finished reading to her, she spoke to me. "Miss Gray, what do you think of Mr. Weston, the new curate?"
I don't know,
I replied, a little surprised by the suddenness of the question.
I think he preaches very well.
"Yes, he does. And he talks well, too," she added.
Oh, does he? I haven't had a chance to speak to him yet,
I explained. "He's such a patient, thoughtful and generous man," she said, smiling. "He comes to see me a lot more than Mr. Hatfield used to. Mr. Hatfield just used to come to tell me that I had to go to church."
And how often does he come?
I wanted to know. "Oh, every few days," she said, and then went on. "And he goes to see all the other sick cottagers too. I heard that he spent his own money on coal for one family, and took food to another." I was surprised and pleased to hear this news. I knew that Mr. Hatfield, the vicar, rarely came to the cottages, and was not interested in the cottagers' needs. But Mr. Weston, well, he really did seem like a breath of fresh air. For 2 years I had been with silly girls, and people who thought that parties and marriage were the only important things in life. At last someone had arrived in the village who would rather spend his money on helping others than on buying the latest fashions. I very much hoped that I would soon be able to talk to him myself. Chapter 7. Chance Meetings. When we were in church the following Sunday, I looked at Mr. Weston in a different light. He was quite a short man, with brown hair and a square face. He was not handsome, but he was not, in my opinion, ugly either. When I had first heard him preach, I thought that he was intelligent and sensible, but also quite serious. Now I knew that he was also truly generous, gentle and caring, and this made him seem more attractive to me as a result. I started to look forward to seeing him every Sunday at church. A few weeks later, I went to see Nancy again. I stayed with her a little longer than usual, because her cat had been missing for a couple of days. I tried to tell her that the cat would surely return, and that it was probably just out hunting, but Nancy was sad and worried. However, just as I was about to leave, there was a knock at the door. The door then opened, and in walked Mr. Weston, who was smiling and carrying Nancy's cat. "Here you are, Nancy," he said warmly, and gave the cat to her. "I told you I would find him." Then he smiled at me and said, "I do hope that you are not planning to leave now, Miss Gray. I'm afraid that it has just started to rain." Before I could speak, Nancy had pulled another chair near the fire and said, "You must both stay here by the fire until the rain has stopped. There's plenty of room for us all." We sat together as Nancy thanked Mr. Weston several times, and Mr. Weston explained how he had found the cat. After a few minutes of conversation, Mr. Weston said that he was very pleased to have returned the cat, but that he must now go and visit another neighbour. He politely said goodbye and then left. I had very much enjoyed my visit to Nancy's cottage, despite, or perhaps because of, the rain. Rosalie was now so keen to flirt with as many men as possible that she usually went to church twice on a Sunday. Happily for me, I was always expected to accompany her. Often, if the weather was good, both she and her sister would walk home instead of taking the carriage. Rosalie preferred to do this as there was always the chance that a man would offer to walk some of the way home with her. On one sunny day, near the end of March, I accompanied the girls, and 3 of their admirers, on one of their walks back from church. I felt uncomfortable on these walks. I did not want to walk next to them and be ignored by them, but neither did I want to walk behind them like a lonely servant. Instead, I pretended to study flowers at the side of the road, so that I had an excuse to walk behind them on my own. As I was walking, I saw some yellow primroses growing high on the top of a bank that was covered in grass. These small, beautiful flowers reminded me of my garden at home, where lots of these flowers grew each spring. I wanted to pick some of the flowers to take with me. I started to climb the bank, but found that it was too difficult for me to climb easily. At that moment, I heard someone walking behind me, and a warm, well-known voice suddenly said, "Allow me to pick them for you, Miss Gray." Within a few moments, the flowers had been picked and were in my hand. It was Mr. Weston, of course. Who else would make the effort to do something so thoughtful for me, an unimportant governess? I was not used to anyone in the village being so kind to me, and I felt very grateful. I thanked him nervously and began to walk down the country road towards Rosalie, Matilda, and their group. "Your young ladies have left you alone," he commented as he began to walk next to me. "Yes, they are busy with more interesting people," I replied. "Then slow down a little. If I were you, I wouldn't go so quickly to catch them up," he said, and smiled. For a few moments we walked in silence, and I could not think of anything to say to him. Then he spoke, and asked me if I especially liked primroses. "Oh, yes, I love them," I said. "I miss my family so much, and primroses remind me of home." "How lucky you are, Miss Gray, to have a home that you love and know that you can return to," he told me. "Yes," I agreed. "It gives me so much comfort that I don't think I could live without it." "I'm sure you could," he said thoughtfully. "The human heart is much stronger than we might think. You might be miserable if you lost your home, but you would survive and you would be all right." He was quiet for a moment before continuing quietly. "Take my word for it, because I speak from experience. There was a time when I, like you, believed that a home and family were the only things that made life bearable. but both of my parents have now died, and I no longer have a home. All I have are 2 rented rooms in this village, and yet not only have I survived, but I still have hope.
And you don't know what happiness there may be in the future for you,
I said quickly.
You are still young.
I am already very happy, he replied, because I know that I can be useful and help people who are less fortunate than me. When the walk was finished, I could not stop thinking about Mr. Weston. He seemed such a sensitive, caring, thoughtful man. I felt very sorry for him because he had no mother, no father, and no real home. Perhaps this was the reason why he often looked so serious. But I also thought that, over the months, he would surely make friends in the village. If he wanted to, he could make a home for himself, and in time he might meet a woman, someone as honest and as good as him, who he could marry and share his new home with. What a happy life they could lead together, and how lucky that woman would be. I put the primroses in some water in my room and looked at them every day. When they finally began to die, I took one of them and placed it between the pages of a large book so that it would dry. I still have that dried flower today, and I plan to keep it forever. Chapter 8. Mr. Hatfield. The following day was as sunny as the previous one. I spent the first part of the morning trying to teach Matilda, who was in a terrible mood because she wanted to go outside and ride her pony. After just a couple of hours, she gave up and said that she was going to play with the dogs. When she had left, I started to draw. Rosalie had gone out that morning to enjoy a quiet walk and to sit and read her book in the fields. She had told me to finish a drawing that she herself had started several days earlier. At my feet lay a small dog with rough hair. The dog belonged to Matilda, but she hated the animal and said that it was not well behaved. It really was quite a good dog, but she said that it was not even clever enough to know who its owner was. The truth was that to begin with she had played with the dog all the time, but she had soon got tired of having to look after it. Then, of course, the job became mine. Because I was the person who gave Snap food and took him for walks, he grew to love me. I became very fond of him too. Matilda, seeing that the dog preferred to be with me than with her, decided she did not like him, and often said that she might sell him. While I was sitting like this, trying to finish Rosalie's drawing, Mrs. Murray suddenly came into the room.
Miss Gray,
she began.
How on earth can you sit inside drawing on such a wonderful day as this?
Of course, I would not have been doing this for my own pleasure, but Mrs. Murray did not understand that.
Why don't you go outside with the young ladies?
She added. I think, madam, I replied, that Miss Murray is out reading somewhere, and Miss Matilda is spending time with the dogs.
Well, I think if Matilda spent more time here, in the classroom with you, she wouldn't need to spend so much time with those silly dogs, she said. And if you were a little more cheerful and friendly towards Rosalie, then perhaps she wouldn't spend so much time walking around the fields with a book in her hand, she added. Then, after a pause, and why does she like to be on her own so much?
She says that she likes to be alone when she has a new book to read, I explained.
But why can't she read it in the garden? Why should she go into the fields? And why does she so often seem to bump into Mr. Hatfield when she is out?
Mrs. Murray was full of questions now.
And I'm sure I've just seen him from my window this very minute, walking very quickly in the direction of that field where she often sits, she cried. You should know exactly where she is at all times. Please go and see if she is there, she continued. It is not right for a young lady to be walking alone like that. Any man at all could approach her and,
talk to her, and she is often far too friendly with them." As Mrs. Murray had suggested, I found Rosalie walking by the fields with Mr. Hatfield. As I got near them, I thought that Rosalie certainly did look elegant as she smiled and chatted to Mr. Hatfield. She was walking slowly under the trees with her closed book in one hand, a flower in the other hand, and her long dress moving gently with the light wind. Snap, running ahead of me, interrupted the romantic moment by grabbing her dress in his teeth and pulling at it. This carried on for a moment, until Mr. Hatfield kicked the dog. Snap ran back to me, and as I walked forward to touch him, I heard Mr. Hatfield speak. "When will I see you again, Miss Murray?" he asked. He had realised that my arrival meant that the time for him to leave had come.
At church, I suppose,
Rosalie replied.
"Unless your work brings you here again at the exact moment that I happen to be walking in this field."
"Well," he said, "I could always manage to have business here, if I knew exactly when and where to find you."
"Oh,"
she said, smiling flirtatiously.
"I couldn't possibly know today what I might be doing tomorrow."
"Then let me have that flower you were holding to comfort me and remind me of you," he said, half joking and half serious. He reached his hand out to take the flower.
"No,"
she said, and moved the flower away.
"I won't give you the flower."
"Oh, please do," he cried. "I will be a miserable man if you don't. Don't be so wicked to me. Why say no for something which is so easily given, yet would mean so much to me, please?" He could not have sounded more desperate had he been begging someone to save his life. Rosalie was clearly enjoying the power she had over this man. After a few moments, she finally said,
"Oh, here then,"
and gave the flower to him.
"Take it and go."
He received the gift happily, said something quietly into her ear that made her laugh and go red in the face, then he left.
"I'm so glad you came,"
Rosalie said to me when he had gone.
"I was beginning to think he would never leave. He's always coming here, pretending that his work for the church has brought him out this way."
"Well," I began, "your mother doesn't want you to go beyond the garden without someone like me to accompany you and fight off all the men. She saw Mr. Hatfield walking towards the fields and sent me out to take care of you straight away."
"Oh, as if I couldn't take care of myself,"
she cried.
"She was telling me to keep away from Mr. Hatfield the other day, but I wouldn't fall in love with him or with anyone. I hate the word love. I might prefer one man to another, but even then I would never prefer Mr. Hatfield. I like talking to him because he's clever and funny, but I'm not at all interested in him. He hasn't got any money. But I must have someone to flirt with, and he's the only person who comes here. When we go out, Mother will only let me flirt with Sir Thomas Ashby, because the plan is that I will marry him, and it's not good for me to be seen with other men. But he's boring, and not half as nice as Mr. Hatfield."
"Is he?" I asked. "Then why do you want to marry him?"
"Well, it doesn't matter that he's boring," she replied. "He's rich, and he'll be all right when he's married. I just wish he wasn't so ugly, but then there aren't very many men to choose from here in the countryside."
"But wouldn't Mr. Hatfield be a better choice?" I asked.
"Well, he would be if he was the Lord of Ashby Park, but he isn't. And the fact is that I must have Ashby Park, and it doesn't matter who I share it with."
I was shocked by Rosalie's attitude. "But Mr. Hatfield clearly thinks that you like him," I said. "He will be very disappointed when he realises he is wrong."
"Well, it is his own fault for making assumptions about what I might feel. Why on earth does he think that I like him? In fact, I'm looking forward to seeing his face when I tell him that I don't, she replied. There was nothing I could say that would change her views. 3 days went by before Rosalie went to the fields again. I went with her, but after walking for half an hour or so, she suddenly asked me to go back to the house to get her book for her. When I returned, some time later, she ran towards me. Her cheeks were pink, and she was waving to me. Miss Gray,
she called.
I have some exciting news. Just after you left to get my book, Mr. Hatfield suddenly appeared from nowhere. He chatted for a while and was very polite and said all sorts of things about me, but he is so full of himself. You won't believe this. He actually asked me to marry him.
And you... I started. I was worried about what she was about to tell me.
I stood tall and proud and said how shocked I was that he had proposed, Rosalie explained. I said that surely he had seen nothing in my behaviour to make him think that I would want to marry him. You should have seen him. His face went white. I told him that I did not want to marry him, and that my parents would never agree to it. He looked terribly sad, and I almost felt sorry for him. Then he seemed angry. He told me that he loved me greatly and that I had broken his heart, that I had flirted with him and played with him like a toy without any thought of marrying him. Can you believe that he said that?
I certainly did believe it, and I agreed with Mr. Hatfield, but I said nothing. Then he asked me to keep his proposal to me a secret and tell no one, she went on. He said that if I didn't keep it a secret, he would tell people what I had done. He said no one would want to marry me if they knew how badly I had behaved. So I promised, and then he left. But you have broken your promise already, I said, truly shocked by how she was talking.
Oh, but it's only you. I know you won't tell anyone, she said. And I will tell my mother, just to show her how wrong she was when she thought that I might fall for him.
Suddenly, I realized why Rosalie seemed so happy. She could now prove to her mother that she had been wrong. I was shocked by how she had behaved toward Mr. Hatfield, and by how much pleasure she seemed to get from seeing the poor man suffer. The only positive thing I saw in the situation was that Mr. Hatfield had escaped what surely would have been a very unhappy life with Rosalie.